I'm Caroline Wilcox-Warloo, and I work with kids through libraries. And I'd like to ask you to address the importance of early intervention. We know that early intervention saves a lot of pain and suffering, and we know how to do it. I think one thing that I would like to hear you talk about is how can we make that a reality in our schools, and why is a structured Tier 1 program such as Foundation critical to early intervention?
I certainly agree that early intervention is vital, right? If we're doing things right, we can prevent children from failing, right? So the first thing we have to do is to have a good assessment program in place so that we don't have to wait 6 months before we see a child who is not making progress. So, and it can be informal, it can be more formal. There's many ways you can do it, but the main thing is that you need to do it, and you need to really watch each child so that as soon as they start falling back, you can provide intervention. I've done a lot of work with pre-Ks, with Catholic Charity Pre-K, and we had that same system in place there where if we saw a child who was not able to rhyme or was slow at learning their letters, well, they got pulled in a small group and we did fun activities with them. Because you can tell at a very young age, those children that are going to struggle, you know, they're warning signs. And you can start that as early as pre-K. And with the idea that we don't want any children to fail. We don't want children to have those feelings that you had in school. And if we catch it early enough and treat it right from the start, we can go a long way to preventing failure.
I would follow up, you know, exactly what Laura is saying, but also know as parents. So how many of you in the audience are parents? So a lot of you. Just knowing the policies that a state has in place. So Connecticut is actually in the forefront as having policies that protect children, including there's a requirement that all districts have to administer a universal screener. And we also have legislation that requires districts to identify children who are at risk for dyslexia. But as parents, you have to know what to do to make districts accountable, because the State Department of Ed cannot hold accountable all the districts. So it is really unfortunate that parents actually end up having to exert that pressure and ensure that the districts are doing what they must do. And what they must do is identify children at risk as early as possible. What happens oftentimes is districts will say, well, you can't identify a child, for example. You can't identify a child as being dyslexic until they're reading, which means that you have to wait until they're in first grade. Well, you've lost a year or two of precious time. So you have to say, well, you don't have to identify the child as being dyslexic, but at risk for dyslexia, right? So if you're at risk, that means that it is incumbent on the teacher to do the right thing, and the administrators really giving the teachers the support to provide the instruction that those young children who are at risk will benefit from. So parents can do a lot, and certainly as evidenced by what Kelly has done and lots of parents in this audience. Parents really provide the most, I think, have the most leverage to hold the districts and the state accountable for implementing the laws that are on the books. And we have really good laws in the state. We just have to ensure that they're enforced.
Dena, Karen?
As far as Wilson goes, we do have a pre-K program that we have that's designed for students, and it teaches them just like the letters and the sounds, and eventually letter formation. But I think that, just to echo back on Laura and on Margie, that screening thing is important. It's just, and again, it's like you said, it's at risk is what we're looking at. Which students are showing those markers? Where are those red flags popping up? And again, I know a number of districts, like you said, in Connecticut are really looking at a lot of pre-K programs, and so that's just a wonderful piece for us and for, to be able to reach out and to help as much as we possibly can, and then to bring these programs to the kids too. And then the screening pieces, I think, I was at IDA in October, and you had the symposium, Margie, on the pre-screeners, and Nadine Gabb's work and everything, and I just think that's fabulous. The more that can be brought into the district, into the state, the better.
Parents, any parents want to have any red flags in this? Do they want to come up and ask? One of the other things, another thing is, pediatricians and dental hygienists, I'm just a simple country filmmaker here, but it's like if you meet the kid and you say, hey, how's, I hear you're going to school next year. Oh yeah, I'm really excited about going to school like my big brother and big sister. And you write that down, excited to go to school next year. And then when you see them after they've been in school, how's school? I mean, you can begin to tell how kids feel. So these are, again, signs that it could be dyslexia, time to get maybe an early screening and save a lot of self-esteem problems going down the toilet a little bit down the lines.
I would have to say I was fortunate because I have twins. So one of my girls was learning, she was having no problem, and the other one was struggling. And actually, I had them in a pre-K program, and the woman that was running the program said, I think there's something wrong. Your daughter's not learning her alphabet, and I think you should hold her back. And then when she went into kindergarten, I was very lucky because, again, her teacher said, one of your daughters is struggling, and I think you should have her tested. So it's definitely there if, the teacher has the right training, or they can just see that the child is struggling compared to the other students in the classroom. So it's really important to get that early screening and to tell parents, once you screen them, if you identify something, you should tell them. It should be communicated to them.
Early intervention, and then communicate with the parents, communicate with the whole school system. Yes?
So I just want to say I keep hearing early intervention, and that's critical in the early grades. It's easy to identify, it's easier to fix, and you can correct things in kindergarten and in first grade that won't present themselves again as a later problem. Parents, listen. If your schools are telling you, oh, he's just a little behind, he'll catch up, and then you get to third grade and they're having breakdowns, that's not how it works. If you have a concern in kindergarten, you say something, because as educators, there's so much we can do to hit that hard and fast and correct it to a point where your child won't suffer. I also want to say, we're talking about intervention, and I don't want anyone to underestimate the power of prevention. When schools have good programs and curricula in place, and that lies in the hands of our teachers that make all of the difference, don't be fooled, it is up to them, they hold that power, then we could make changes for kids and fix problems before you would even think that you had to intervene, because that problem never came forward. It never presented itself because we handled it from the beginning in a preventative way.